Hello and welcome to this video on the subject of Photoshop's layers. Let's go through a practical layers project. I'm going to take all 9 of these images and we're going to arrange them individually on one basic canvas. Now, this could be for projection or for printing. So why have I brought you into Adobe's Bridge rather than Photoshop to start making a layered stack? It's because we've got 9 images. We've already selected them. We know we're going to use all of them within a layered stack. And the best and quickest way, I think, to do that is from Bridge. So what I'm going to do here is to select all 9 of these thumbnails. Now we can do that by selecting one, then holding the Control key and select all of the others individually. But here, because I've got them isolated, I can do that with a click and drag. Once I've got them all selected, if we go to the top left and select Tools and down to Photoshop and then load files into Photoshop Layers, it's only going to take a few seconds for Photoshop to put all 9 of those images into the layered stack on the right, and we can see that progress in real time. One of the first things we should do now is to make sure we save our image as a Photoshop file so we retain all the layers that we've just created. In fact, we should be saving regularly throughout the project. What I'd like to do next is to convert all of those layers into a smart object. I'm going to do that by starting with the bottom layer by selecting it, right-clicking, and there's the option that I want, Convert to a Smart Object. A little symbol appears at the bottom right to inform us that's done, but I do need to do each of these individually. I'm going to link below to a 5-minute video which will explain exactly why we're doing this. Now I've gone ahead off camera, right-clicked every one of those thumbnails and converted them to a smart object. The video I just referred to, the 5-minute video, there's no need for you to rush off and watch that now. We can continue just as we are. Now when we're working in layers like this, we can increase the canvas independently of the image. Now, if I just turn off all of these images above the bottom one, you can see we can view the canvas here, shown to us in this checkerboard fashion, and that's indicating that this area is completely transparent. So what I need to do is to go up to my image menu, top left of the screen, select canvas size, and I'm going to untick the relative box so we can see the actual width and height. Then I'm going to select inches. Now you can see that left on its own, it's going to be 27 by 17353. What I'm going to do is increase that. Let's assume I want to make a large print. 36 inches by 24 inches. Now when I click OK, you'll see exactly what happens. It slides off screen for a little bit. And here's one of those keyboard shortcuts that you're going to be using all the time, and this one is well worth remembering. Control-0 will fit the image on screen. Now we come to the creative part of the process. Using my free transform tool, I'm going to resize each image, position each image on the canvas, and even give it a slight rotation just to make the presentation look a little more appealing. So let me go up to the top left of the screen. We're going to choose Edit, Free Transform. Now here's another shortcut key which you're going to be using at least another 8 times after this. So this is another one which is well worth trying to learn. A good tip, write them down on a piece of card in front of your computer. You'll soon get them into the memory banks. But I'm going to select it. You can see I get a bounding box around the outer edge. I can click and drag. I can move within the picture and move it down to the bottom right. Now I don't have to worry too much at the moment about the exact size. I can adjust that as and when I add all of the other images. And if I move my cursor outside of the bounding box, well, there you can see how we can get that nice gentle rotation. Now when we are happy with this, there's a number of ways we can commit this. If you look up at the top of the screen, you've got a little arrow that you can, a tick that you can click. You've got a done command to the right of that. But if I just select the next layer ready to start work and turn that one on, that also commits the change. And now you can see why shortcuts like Control-T are quite valuable, because this image here, I could do the same with that. Maybe I'll choose to put that up at the top right at the moment and give that a little bit of a tilt. And I'm going to continue and do all of the rest. Now once we've completed that initial transform, if you look at the three images on the right hand side, the surfers are coming in from the right towards our left. If we look on the left hand side, they're doing exactly the same. But it would be much better if we could flip them around so the surfers on the left were coming from the left to the right. We don't have any text within those images, so there shouldn't be a problem with me just flipping them over. The way we do that is first identify the layer. So I'm looking first for the layer that's at the top left, select it from the layers on the right hand side. We can use the little eye to make sure we've picked the right one. Then we need to go to our edit menu at the top left of the screen, down to transform, and down the bottom of here we can flip horizontal. And all I would need to do now is to select the other two layers on the left hand side and do the same with them. Now whenever we're working on a stack of images like this, we can rename any of these layers or all of them. It's certainly not essential, but it may help. If we take that top layer as an example, you can see I've got it highlighted. If I just touch the eye, we can just identify it's the middle image on the left. So perhaps if I double click the word Surfers 001, I could replace that with an abbreviation of ML, which should be enough to tell us exactly which image that refers to. Of course, we get a visual reference in the thumbnail, but sometimes relabeling these can help too. Now, just before we move on further, I'd like to identify and select this image, which is the middle image right in the center of the artwork. And once again, I can turn it off and on just to make sure I've identified it. Using that move tool from the top of the toolbox, if I click and drag this image, you can see that it sits behind those particular images and those layers. But as I move it around, it's underneath some layers but above others. We need to understand exactly what's going on here. And it's all to do with the stacking order of the layers we can see on the right hand side. Because with this image here, as we move it around, it's going to move around on top of this image and this image, but all the remaining images is going to be beneath because it's lower than those within the layered stack. Of course, we can adjust that, and this is another creative process. If I wanted my center image maybe to be larger, if I hit that Control-T key for a moment, supposing I wanted to create a piece of artwork where the center image actually overlapped all of the other images, here it doesn't look very attractive at all. But what I could do to facilitate what I'm looking for is simply to drag this to the top of the layered stack. And there I have the result that I'm looking for. Now, as you can see, I've reset that center image so we can move on. What I think we ought to do next is to create a new blank layer down at the bottom of the layers stack. We'll flood that with white to give the images something to stand on. To do that, we need to go down to the bottom right of the Layers palette to the little plus in a box and click it. Now when we do that, the new blank layer has been created right at the top of the layered stack. A new blank layer is always created above whatever layer we currently had selected. In this case, I happen to have Surface 7 at the top, so that's where the blank layer is created. But we can simply drag it right the way down to the bottom. If we go to the toolbox on the left-hand side, we can see we have white selected as our foreground color. If we go to this option here and choose the paint bucket, I can click into this area, and there we have our images sitting on their white background. Now I'd like to add some style. I'll add it to the image that's sitting right in the middle of our artwork so we can see it clearly. So I'll go to the top of my layered stack, select it and just identify it, make sure I've got the right one. With this layer selected, if we go down to the bottom left of the layered stack and hit the effects and blending options, we get a number of options here to choose from. Let's push them over here so they're out of the way of the image we're looking at. I want to select two from here. One of them is the drop shadow, and you can see the drop shadow appears around the edge of the image. But if I highlight this panel here, all of the options for the drop shadow open up to me. So I can choose the angle of the drop shadow, and I can give it a bit more of a spread and a distance, and I can give it a little bit more impact. We will all pick something slightly different. But the other thing I'd like to do is to tick the box to stroke the edge of the image, and then highlight this box to open up the values for that stroke command. And here we've got 8 pixels showing up on the inside edge of the image in black, and there we can see it around the outer edge. And I can change these values and make them much thicker or much thinner. I think something between 6 and 8 looks quite nice and delicate to me, along with that drop shadow. Of course, these are changeable at any time, and when I click OK, you can see the difference with that central image. Make sure you get this well selected. For example, if I felt I wanted to adjust the drop shadow, I can go back, and there you see it. I can double click it, and I'm straight back in. And what I could do here is, if I wanted to make it a bit more powerful, I can do so. And when I'm happy with the result, click OK. The reason I wanted to be careful about the first selection I've made is because what I can now do is copy that setting to every other image. All we need to do here, we can right click and we can choose copy. I'm looking for it because I use shortcuts, so I'm not really sure exactly where it is. There it is, right the way down there. Copy layer style, it says. So then if I select the next one down in the layered stack, right click and paste layer style, you can see I've got exactly the same settings on the second image. A quick way to do this is to hold the Alt key and drag the effects from one layer to another. And if you stay with me for a few seconds, we'll complete the whole lot. I need to drag this down to get access to the last couple. And again. And that also gives me the opportunity to say that we can tuck these away if we want to tidy up the layers a little bit and not have it stretched down too far. Even the thumbnails here can be made bigger or smaller, but I think I've got mine set at the biggest value. But there, certainly we've got our artwork complete. Now, as you can probably see here, off camera, I've visited each of these layers in turn, and using that free transform tool, I adjusted the size, position, and the rotation of all the images to try to create a nice presentation. The best advice I can give with this sort of work is to make sure you save your Photoshop file often. I'm up to my 4th save while working through this video. But at some stage we do have to flatten all the layers together. But just before we do, let's ask a question. Supposing we got this far and we decided that one of the images we wanted to change for something else. How would we go about that? Now you'll remember I started the project in Bridge by selecting all 9 images and then opening them up directly into the layers on the right hand side. What I'm going to do is go back to that same location because I've dropped a 10th image in there and we can swap it for one of these. So here's the image that I'd like to place within my layered stack. So highlighting that thumbnail, I'm going to double click and open this up into Photoshop. What we're going to do here is drag and drop this into our artwork. To do this, we pick up the tab at the top of the screen, just drag it out so we can see the artwork. We can now either drag and drop the image or the thumbnail. I'm going to pick up the Move tool from my toolbox first. So I can click drag and drop here, or I can click drag and drop here. And we see a familiar thing to what we saw when we started. So I'm going to make this the center of my artwork. So what I'll do first off is to locate the center and just turn that off. Then I need to locate my new image. I can drag it up to the top if I wish, but there's no great need to do that. But I do need to hit that Ctrl-T, the free transform tool, so that I can reduce the size, drag it into position, and decide on what orientation that I'd like to give it. And when I'm happy, I can hit the tick on the options bar, and once again, the same as we did before, I can hold the Alt key, click and drag the effects onto that layer. And there we have another image inserted in there pretty quickly and easily. Now, as I said, it's best to save this as a Photoshop file, give yourself a chance to evaluate it, but at some stage, especially if we was going to take this to the printers to be printed, then we would need to go to the top right of the layers, and we would need to flatten the image to finally complete our work. Thanks for watching, and I hope that layers demonstration helps the understanding just a little bit. And I'll see you next time.